miss. We treat it as an enemy, as a problem to be solved, as a malfunction of the mind that needs to be fixed. We say things like, I need to stop overthinking, or my overthinking is ruining my life. But what if I told you that your overthinking isn't actually the problem? What if it's trying to tell you something extremely important and you're just not listening? Let me put it this way. Overthinking is like a smoke alarm going off in your house. Now, you can stand there cursing the smoke alarm, wishing it would shut up, trying various techniques to silence it. You can practice mindfulness to ignore it. You can use affirmations to drown it out. You can distract yourself so you don't hear it. But none of that addresses the actual question. Why is the alarm going off in the first place? What fire is it trying to alert you to? Most approaches to dealing with overthinking treat it as if the overthinking itself is the fire. But I want to suggest that overthinking is the alarm, not the fire. It's a signal, a message, a symptom pointing to something deeper. And until you understand what it's trying to tell you, no amount of techniques for quieting the mind will actually solve anything. You'll just be a person standing in a burning house, congratulating yourself on how well you've learned to ignore the smoke alarm. So what is overthinking really trying to tell you? Well, there are several possibilities, and they're all pointing to the same fundamental issue. You're living out of alignment with your actual nature, with what you genuinely are, beneath all the conditioning and expectations and roles you've taken on. The first thing overthinking might be telling you is this. You're trying to control something that cannot be controlled. Think about when your mind goes into overdrive. It's usually when you're facing uncertainty, isn't it? When you don't know what's going to happen, when the future is unclear, when you can't predict the outcome. Your mind starts spinning, trying to think through every possibility, trying to plan for every contingency, trying to find some way to guarantee a particular result. But here's what your overthinking is really saying. You're trying to control life, and life cannot be controlled. The mind goes into overdrive because you've given it an impossible task. It's like asking your mind to calculate the exact position where a falling leaf will land. The variables are infinite, the factors are constantly changing, and the whole enterprise is fundamentally absurd. But you keep asking your mind to do it anyway, and then you wonder why your mind is exhausted. Your overthinking is not the problem. Your relationship to uncertainty is the problem. Your inability to be comfortable with not knowing is the problem. Your desperate need to control outcomes is the problem. The overthinking is just your mind's futile attempt to fulfill an impossible demand that you're placing upon it. Now, the second thing your overthinking might be telling you is this. You don't trust yourself. Listen carefully to the content of your overthinking. What is it usually about? It's about decisions, isn't it? Should I take this job or that job? Should I stay in this relationship or leave? Should I say yes or no? And you go round and round, weighing the options, making lists of pros and cons, asking everyone else what they think, but you still can't decide. Why? Because you don't trust that you'll be okay regardless of what you choose. You don't trust your ability to handle whatever consequences come from your decision. You don't trust that you have the resilience, the resourcefulness, the fundamental okayness to navigate whatever unfolds. And so your mind keeps churning, looking for the perfect decision, the risk-free choice, the guaranteed right answer. But there is no perfect decision. There is no risk-free choice. There is no guaranteed right answer. Life doesn't work that way. Every choice leads somewhere, and you can't know in advance where that somewhere is. The only way to stop overthinking your decisions is to develop trust in yourself, to know that whatever you choose, you have the capacity to deal with what comes next. Your overthinking is telling you you don't believe in yourself. You don't trust your own resilience. You're looking outside yourself for certainty because you don't feel certain inside yourself. And until you address that fundamental lack of self-trust, no amount of decision-making frameworks or pro-con lists will quiet your mind. Here's a third thing your overthinking might be revealing. You're living according to someone else's script. When your mind won't stop spinning about what you should do, whose script are you following? When you're agonizing over the right choice, who decided what right means? When you're worried about making a mistake, who defined what constitutes a mistake? Very often, overthinking is the mind's response to trying to live a life that isn't actually yours. You've absorbed so many expectations from your parents, your culture, your education, your peers, that you've lost touch with what you actually want. And so every decision becomes an impossible maze because you're trying to satisfy requirements that aren't even yours, trying to live up to standards you never chose, trying to become someone you never wanted to be. Your overthinking is saying, this life you're trying to live doesn't fit. These choices you're agonizing over aren't really your choices. You're trying to force yourself into a shape that isn't your natural shape, and I'm exhausting myself trying to make it work. The solution isn't to think harder or get better at decisions. The solution is to stop living someone else's life and start living your own. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a fourth message your overthinking might be sending, and it's the deepest one of all. Your overthinking might be telling you you've forgotten that you're not actually the thinker. You've identified yourself with your thoughts, and now you're trying to use thinking to solve the problem of thinking, which is like trying to use fire to put out fire. You see, most people assume that they are their thoughts. When thoughts arise, they say, I am thinking. When the mind is busy, they say, I can't quiet my mind. But who is this I that has a mind? Who is this I that thinks thoughts? If you look carefully, you'll find that there's an awareness prior to thought, a consciousness that witnesses thinking without being identical to thinking. You are not the thoughts. You are not the thoughts. You are that which is aware of thoughts. But somewhere along the way, you've become hypnotized by the content of thinking. You've become so identified with the stream of thoughts that you've forgotten you're the space in which the thoughts appear. And so when overthinking happens, you think it's happening to you, when really it's just happening in you, like weather happening in the sky. Your overthinking is trying to wake you up to this fact. It's saying, notice how exhausting it is to be completely identified with thinking. Notice how it never ends, how one thought leads to another in an endless chain. Notice that the thinker who's trying to stop thinking is itself just another thought. The only way out is to recognize what you are beneath all the thinking. This is what the meditation teachers are pointing to when they talk about observing your thoughts without identifying with them. But it's not really a technique, it's a recognition. It's seeing that you are the observing, not the thinking. And when you see this clearly, not just intellectually, but experientially, the whole problem of overthinking dissolves. Not because the thoughts stop, but because you're no longer imprisoned by them. Now, let me tell you about a fifth possibility. Your overthinking might be telling you that you're avoiding something. Think about when your mind really goes into overdrive. Often, it's when there's something you don't want to feel, isn't it? Some emotion you don't want to experience, some truth you don't want to face, some action you don't want to take. And so the mind starts spinning, creating elaborate stories and scenarios and analyses, anything to avoid that simple, direct experience of what is. The overthinking becomes a kind of escape mechanism, a way of staying in your head so you don't have to be in your heart or in your body or in the actual present moment with its uncomfortable feelings and difficult truths. Your overthinking is saying, there's something here you're trying not to see. There's something you're trying not to feel. And I'm going to keep spinning and spinning until you stop avoiding and finally face what's actually here. In this case, the solution to overthinking isn't thinking better or thinking less. It's feeling more. It's dropping down out of your head and into direct experience. It's having the courage to face what you've been running from. Here's another message your overthinking might be conveying. You're trying to live in the future instead of the present. Notice that overthinking is almost always about what might happen, what could go wrong, what you should do next. It's rarely about this actual moment, right now. The mind is in the future, trying to control it, plan for it, prepare for it. But you can't actually live in the future. You can only live now. And when you try to live in a time that doesn't exist yet, your mind goes crazy trying to make the impossible possible. Your overthinking is telling you, come back to now. Stop trying to live in the future. The only moment you can actually inhabit is this one. This doesn't mean you never plan or think about the future. It means you do your planning from a grounded presence in the now, rather than from an anxious obsession with what hasn't happened yet. There's a huge difference. One is functional, the other is neurotic. Let me share one more thing your overthinking might be revealing. It might be telling you that you're approaching life as a problem to be solved, rather than an experience to be lived. The overthinker treats life like a puzzle. If I just think hard enough, if I just figure out the right answers, if I just understand all the variables, then I can solve this puzzle called life and finally be at peace. But life isn't a puzzle with a solution. Life is an experience, a happening, an unfolding. It's not something to be figured out. It's something to be lived. And when you approach it as a problem to be solved, your mind will never rest because there is no solution. There's only this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment, each one new, each one asking not for analysis but for presence. Your overthinking is saying you're using the wrong tool for the task. You're trying to think your way through something that can only be experienced, lived, moved through with your whole being, not just your mind. The solution is to put down the tool of thinking when it's not appropriate, and to engage with life more directly, more fully, with all of yourself, not just your analyzing mind. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying that thinking is bad or that you should never think. Thinking is a wonderful tool when used appropriately. If you're building a house, you need to think about the design. If you're solving a mathematical problem, you need to use your rational mind. Thinking has its place. What I'm saying is that overthinking, that compulsive, exhausting, circular kind of thinking, is a message. It's your system's way of telling you that something is out of balance, that you're using thinking where it doesn't belong, that you're trying to use your mind to solve problems that can't be solved by the mind. So what do you do with this understanding? How do you work with overthinking once you see it as a message rather than an enemy? First, when you notice yourself overthinking, stop fighting it. Stop trying to make it go away. Instead, get curious. Ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? What am I trying to control that can't be controlled? What am I not trusting? Whose life am I trying to live? What am I avoiding? Where am I trying to live other than this present moment? Be honest with yourself. The overthinking will show you where you're out of alignment if you're willing to look. And then, instead of trying to fix the overthinking, address what it's pointing to. If it's showing you that you're trying to control too much, practice letting go. If it's showing you that you don't trust yourself, work on building self-trust. If it's showing you that you're avoiding something, have the courage to face it. The overthinking will naturally quiet down when you address the underlying issue, not because you've used some technique to silence it, but because it no longer needs to send you the message. The alarm goes quiet when you put out the fire. And here's the beautiful thing. When you start working with overthinking this way, when you start listening to what it's trying to tell you, you begin to develop a different relationship with your mind. You stop seeing it as an enemy and start seeing it as an ally, as a feedback mechanism that's actually trying to help you live more authentically, more presently, more in alignment with your true nature. Your mind is not against you. It's trying to get your attention. It's trying to wake you up. And yes, it's doing it in an exhausting, uncomfortable way, but that's because you haven't been listening to the gentler signals. Overthinking is what happens when you ignore the whispers and the mind has to start shouting. So listen, pay attention, be grateful that your mind cares enough about your well-being to send you such loud signals. And then Do what needs to be done. Address the underlying issue. Make the changes that need to be made. Have the courage to live the life you're actually meant to live rather than the one you think you should live. And in doing this, you may discover something wonderful. You may discover that the mind, when it's not being asked to do impossible things, when it's not trying to control the uncontrollable or solve the unsolvable, is actually quite peaceful. Thoughts come and go, but there's a natural ease to it, a natural flow. The mind becomes like a clear pool of water, occasionally rippled by a passing breeze, but fundamentally still, fundamentally at rest. This is what's possible when you stop treating overthinking as the enemy and start hearing it as the message it actually is. Not a problem to be solved, but a teacher trying to show you where you've lost your way so you can find your way back home.